Hello and welcome to CT Politics TV. I'm veteran political strategist Dan Newmyer, and we're talking to Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff today. How are you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Bob, give us a little bit of how you got into politics and how you got started in it and your interest in it.
Yeah, well, thank you. It really started when I was really young, I guess, sitting around the dinner table with my parents and my grandparents talking about various items or issues that were that came up in the community, and there were things that I guess I felt passionate about. And back when I was 7 years old or so, I wrote a letter to the mayor of Norwalk at the time, Mayor Collins, kind of crazy, but he actually wrote me back. And so I was very inspired by that, and I still have his letter that he sent to me.
Oh, no kidding.
Framed in my office, and it had to do with...
Do you have it here?
Not here, back
okay.
at home.
Okay.
And it had to do with litter at the beach, Calf Pasture Beach. And he wrote me back saying, answering my question, and I think I wrote him another letter about the future of Veterans Park in Norwalk, which was called Duffy's Field at the time. And he wrote me back again, and then, that really just kind of, like I said, inspired me. And then when I was in elementary school in 5th grade, I was on the student council, surprise, surprise, and I wrote a letter to Mayor O'Connor, who was the mayor at the time, asking him to come to our student council. And he did. He actually came and visited us. And he was actually a social studies teacher by training, so I think he understood the importance of being with students. And my mom came as well. I have a picture of that framed in my office at my house too.
I'd love to see that.
And so those were kind of the telling moments.
Formative,
yeah. And from there, I went to Hartford all the time with a guy named Alex Knopp, who was a state representative, who then became mayor of Norwalk. I took his place in the House when he became mayor. And then after going with Alex back and forth to Hartford a few times, interned for Chris Dodd in Washington.
Oh, no kidding.
At the United States Senate.
Yeah.
And that was great. He was really great. And then worked on a number of elections and campaigns. Worked for John Larson when he was Senate president. He was state Senate president, and he was running for governor. Was his driver.
No kidding. I actually I have an interview coming up with him, Charles Perino.
Yeah.
His press guy is going to set that up.
Yeah, good.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and John's a great guy. So anyway, so that's kind of it. You just kind of have that passion in your stomach of trying to fix things and make things better for folks.
And so that's really interesting. I think, speaking to the fact that when you introduce kids, or the power of that letter, you wrote it, you sent it out there in the bottle, and it came back.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, that's a really big deal, and it really, here is the end result of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it's really important that whenever I get invited to go to schools or I see students, I always take that opportunity to pay it forward, because I really do think that one of the top things I can do, besides voting on laws and helping constituents and all that's important, but I really think one of the most important things I can do as a legislator, as anybody who's a public servant, is to inspire the next generation. And that's what I try to do, because you want to inspire that next generation in the public service. And I've had a number of people who said, oh, if it weren't for you, I would never have gotten into politics, or I never would have gotten into service or studying abroad because of various things on public service, and so international relations, things like that. So it's not everybody, obviously, but if you can get a few of them, that's what you need.
Yeah, and I think I noticed the other day on your Twitter feed that you were reading to some kids. And I think that's important. I know that a lot of legislators try to make time to do that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think it's important.
Absolutely. And you see kids grow up fast. So if they're in 4th grade, they're 8 years old. They're only 10 years away from voting. So I've been in this business for a little over 20 years now. And so I see people who are like, oh, I remember when you came to my 4th grade class and you read to us, and they still remember. Or you hear parents. I was at someplace the other day, and a parent who I know said, oh, you were at my daughter's class the other day. She said she came home and she was so excited she met you. And it's not me personally, but it's the office and what that represents.
I agree, yeah. Well, hey, maybe you had some charm too. They obviously, if you're going out there and doing it. speak a little bit about how, like, is your family a Democrat family? Is that where you come from? Democratic
Yeah,
roots? And what
my
are your parents?
well, I'll tell you what, it's
what do
very
they do?
interesting background because my dad's side were they were all FDR Democrats,
Okay.
very much FDR Democrats, and so they liked the Roosevelts, they liked Johnson and Kennedy, and going forward. Actually, my grandmother was one who originally liked Bill Clinton in 1992. It was kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
And my dad and my mom's side were all kind of were all Reagan Republicans.
Oh, no kidding.
From they were transplants from Brooklyn, New York, and they came here. So I had a one side of my family were all Republicans, one side was all Democratic, so I heard both sides all the time, and so maybe that's what makes me a good pragmatic person, I think, because I heard both sides all the
Yeah,
time.
I think so. And during that time, growing up, I think we're probably close to the same age, is that we would have those conversations back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, and it wasn't, it didn't have the vitriol and the contentiousness and that we do nowadays. I know that you and I have tweeted back and forth and been hit with a lot of flack from folks, and in the last election cycle, it was particularly vicious, and it seems like the divide is growing and not shrinking. Can you speak to bipartisanship and the change or what you see out there? Because I know
Right.
you take a lot of heat.
Yeah, actually, I thought last election was much better than in the past in some ways. I mean, the vitriol is probably worse, but it seems like a smaller group now, because I think there are a number of people who want to try and work together. I thought, last election there were a lot of big issues. Like there was the abortion issue. There were other bigger kind of issues. I thought the biggest issue for me anyway was saving our democracy, and I think people really understood that, which is why I think that you have still a small group of folks who, no matter what you say, they're always going to be opposed to it. I could say the sun's going to shine the next 300 days and they'd be opposed to it because there's a lack of rain. But I think a lot of people really understood that our democracy was on the line if we didn't vote and vote in a way that protected what we hold near and dear to us in our country. So while I think, some of the rhetoric was high and there was a lot of heat, that it was by a smaller, probably a smaller crowd and a louder crowd. But I do think people are starting to recognize the fact of some of the rhetoric is too high, some of it is too much, and that we've got to work together more.
Yeah, and I think that the fallout from that type of thing, of people not talking or being disrespectful to other people, really it brings you more of what you're already upset about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how are you going to convince you or talk to you or engage you on a issue if somebody's just freaking
Yeah.
out and being insulting and everything? Because you don't have to talk to anyone.
Right.
And
Right. I mean, I make a point of, like, if somebody's going to be personal or attack me personally or mislead about my record, we're not having a conversation. If you want to debate an issue, I'll be happy to debate an issue. But like I tell the school kids when I go there, you attack the issue, you don't attack the person. And if you can keep it on the issue, that's fine. But you also have to understand that there's a set of facts that are facts, right?
Yeah.
There's not alternate facts.
Right.
The thing about working together, and I'll say this because a lot of people don't know this, in Connecticut, our legislature, 85% of what we do in the state Senate, 85% of what we vote on is unanimous. 95% of what we do is bipartisan. So we work very well together. But I will say this, and this is more for a national crowd, is that if it's me versus an extreme MAGA type, and people say we need to work together, it's really hard to do that because there's really it's hard to find common ground at that point, because either I have to go so far to the right and give up what I value, and that side will never go back to the other direction.
I think, I was a Democrat and became a Republican, but I consider myself a progressive Republican. For women's right to choose, and I want more affordable government, more value, and so I find that the far right of the Republican Party now has just really gone into the weeds, and it's hard to support. And from our side, we had Themis Claridis ran for the U.S. Senate seat against Richard Blumenthal and was bombed out by the MAGA people and Leora Levy. And when you listen to that rhetoric, it just seems like an alternate universe, right? Connecticut Republicans who've been successful for Congress and statewide office have always been a moderate Republican that could work on issues and stuff like that. So even for me, I found myself not able to support some of these candidates that had no experience and everything else. And we lost what, in my mind, could have been some good debate between Themis and Richard Blumenthal. And the election was basically over when the primary happened. So I totally get what you're saying, is that when the values are so far out, and there's a problem with people gaslighting people and providing alternate facts on this crazy fringy side where they're I don't want to mention any names, but we have people who are putting out crime statistics and saying they're going on the crime blotter and they're pulling out the latest blog or whatever of this happened in this city and everything, and crime is out of control. Well, when you look at the statistics, you see that it's down 50%. Certain things bump up here and there, but overall, crime is down. So misleading people and lying to people and gaslighting them is that's not good policy, right? And or helpful to anyone.
Right. Because you're trying to get things done, and you just want pragmatic people. Even if you're a little left or a little right, you want pragmatic people to kind of come together. And we still have a lot of that here in the legislature. So it's important to still have those relationships. Nationally, it's all I know is what I see from afar, but it looks pretty bleak right now.
It does, and I think that really bleeds into the state politics.
It does.
And to your point, I know that the parties are not homogenous. There's progressive Democrats and there's conservative Democrats, and there's progressive Republicans and there's conservative Republicans and there's MAGA Republicans. But in the caucuses now, I see people having conversations and acting professionally. And when you get outside or you get into social media and people are just inundated with Fox News or CNN or NBC or whatever, they're not dealing on an issue basis, even if you talk to them.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I should have said earlier before that I could hopefully recruit you back to the Democratic Party, because we are the real fiscal conservatives, by the way, because we have reduced spending, we have reduced debt, we've reduced a lot of things that were done with only Democratic votes, and we have some of the fewest state employees now than we've had since the 1950s.
And that's capita. That's another thing is there's things that people can go after on policy for the Republican side on the Democrats, but when you start to talk about the state employees and the benefits and the unions and all this stuff, I have to concede that the workforce has shrunk, that the pensions and the retirements, have been reorganized.
Totally changed.
Right, but that news doesn't get out there, right? It's just big government and the unions and everything else. The other thing...
By the way, Florida, which everybody looks at as a state of freedom, they're adding more government and growing their government like crazy. we're doing the exact opposite in Connecticut here. We are hiring people, obviously, but we also have a lot of retirement. So I'm just saying it's the rhetoric doesn't match the reality, as you're saying about it, because you look at some of the Republican states and they're growing their government like crazy, and here in Connecticut, where we're a Democratic state, we're so nimble right now. We don't have county government; it's either local or state, and we're not on a hiring binge. We're just trying to make up for a lot of folks who've retired.
Yeah, and there's a lot of union bashing which goes on, and I worked for Connecticut State Employees Association and SEIU, and people have the right to organize in this country, and they're immovable rocks in the river, right? And people should be embracing probably the most American pushback to big government, big business are labor unions.
Well, and the fact that, labor unions help to give us weekends, labor unions help give us worker standards, health standards, got rid of, children who were working like ridiculous hours or unsafe types of work that they were doing. So unions have done a lot to grow this middle class and improve people's lives, improve the quality of life, build the middle class. As much somebody may say, I don't work in a union and I don't want to. Okay, but just understand that some of the working conditions you have that you find positive, even if you're not in a union, are at the benefit of having unions in our state and our country. And all you have to do is look at what's happening right now in a lot of the service industry right now, and how people are being taken advantage of, and how they don't have good rights. And so, we're as a government fighting for their rights, but also unions are too at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, no matter what party you're from, is that you're offering an alternative solution to the problem that's not just ignoring it, right? If there's whatever the issue is, you have to come to the table with something that's going to improve people's lives. You have to sell them a vision of something. You can't just be saying, "Oh, I don't, no to this, no to that."
Yep.
Right? Problems need to get solved, and time is progressive, right? We can't go back 2 minutes or 2 years or anything, right? You can only go forward. So, if you're running on a platform that has no solutions, no vision, and in some cases is hate-based, right?
Right.
I mean, who the heck wants that?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody. You're not selling that to anybody, right?
Yep.
And fear is another thing that gets injected into this, and that can come from both directions as well. Yeah. So we can all do better that way.
Yeah, but I think I have to say that I think that government it can be a force for good, and that's why I'm here. I mean, if you didn't think so, none of us would be here. None of us would be part of this process. But government can really be a force for good. I mean, I look at, the laws we pass, like I said, are one thing, and some of that is intangible. You pass a law and you hopefully the policy works and you watch it work over time and see if it helps improve people's lives. Also, what's more tangible is when if a constituent, a voter calls up and says, hey, I've got a problem with an agency or got a problem with an insurance company or whatever, and then you're able to help them. That the force of government can be helpful to make positive change for people, whether it's on a big law like paid family medical leave, or if it's somebody who's having an issue with their insurance company.
That's I experienced that firsthand working for the House Majority Leader David Pudlin, who was my mentor in politics. And when I filled in as his legislative aide, I would call the DMV on behalf of constituents. I would call different government entities, and the doors would open, and hopefully things got solved. So, how do you see this session unfolding? I know, like one of the issues was the gun issue, and we got this package from Governor Lamont, and we also got a bill from the mayors of the big cities in Connecticut. And I'm a firearm owner and a 2A supporter, and one of the the things that I care about is, you know, the issues that these mayors brought up of identifying this group of folks who are actually committing the crimes, and they're getting let out early and everything, and they want to toughen some penalties, and that seemed like something that everybody could get behind. Some of the other ones that that the governor put forward, I didn't care for too much, right? It seems like more window dressing than substance, but people can disagree on that. I stopped by the hearing and I talked to some people, and I found it, you know, the gun activist folks, I guess anti-gun activists, didn't want to engage in conversation on it. And I hope that they can come to the table and we can have a discussion about it. But what do you see with this package, and you know, where do you stand on those issues?
Yeah, I mean, look, we did a big gun bill after Newtown, after the massacre at Sandy Hook. It was gun safety, it was mental health, and it was hardening schools, school security. 3 parts to a big bill. And you know, when we were debating that bill and it was getting written, folks on the side who did not want more restrictions said, you're just going to take guns away from the good guys and give them to the bad guys. It will do nothing to improve crime here in the state of Connecticut. And so again, this is one of those things you vote on. You have to. There has to be time to see whether the policy works or doesn't work. You know, my gut was that it was going to work, but you don't know, right, until a few years later. So what we saw was that over time, gun crime, gun violence did go down based on the restrictions that we had, and that we, you know, continued to build on that over years. For example, a very important law was Ethan's Law, which had to do with gun safety storage, right? Because we've seen time and time again across the country where guns are not properly stored in a home, and kids end up having access to those weapons and fire them accidentally or not, and
or they get stolen.
Right, exactly, or they get stolen, right? And so we have to make sure that whatever we're doing will make a difference here. And so I think I'll let the Judiciary Committee kind of figure out what they're going to do on all those things. I will say that there's two pieces that I think are important. One is, you know, we banned ghost guns a long time ago, but there's, I guess, some loopholes in the law that maybe we need to consider to tighten that up a little bit. Ghost guns are, you know, people make them themselves, or they're just put together, but they assemble them together. And the reason why that's important is because a lot of the guns that we see in the cities that are at crimes are ghost guns now.
Oh, really?
And so that's why I think, you know, federally we need to get a better handle on ghost guns, and in our state we probably need to work to make sure that we're doing everything we can there as well. Second piece that's important is continuing to grow Project Longevity and other programs that are bottom up, not top down, in our cities.
See, that was the one piece that I thought was a good one, was the more, you know, trying to get at the grassroots level.
Right.
And
that's been
cities.
Successful.
Has it?
Yes.
Yeah. So another one was that the gun side said was successful was the Firearms Task Force. I don't know too much about that, but I guess they did away with it, or?
Yeah, so maybe we just put it back again. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes things run their course and they go away, and then sometimes you need to bring it back. But we'll have to look at that as well. So I think there's some things we can do. But again, Connecticut, because of the fact that we have we have registration, we have you have to take a test and go through psychological tests, things like that. I think those are all important things. And actually, I was at a bipartisan gun safety conference, or it was based on, it's based on gun safety, I guess, in Massachusetts, Boston last fall. People from both sides of the aisle came to listen, and a lot of the things that we're doing have helped reduce, based on stats, based on data from leading experts across the country. In Connecticut, things that we've done. So, you know, basically the problem is that Connecticut's not an island, and so we're only as good as us and the states around us. We get hampered because of the highways, that come up from the south and bring illegal guns here, which is why Chicago is such a problem, because it's not like Chicago doesn't have tough gun laws. They do. They get, because they're so close to other states that have very liberal gun laws. So as long as our states around us have strict gun laws too, we're in better shape. But we really need a more nationalized policy on this, because if the country would follow some of the things that Connecticut has done, we'd be a much safer country, and we wouldn't constantly have these debates, nor would we see those massacres like we saw at Uvalde and Buffalo and other places around the country, because nobody wants to see those.
Well, the other thing is that when we split off into two camps, then it always seems like that each side doesn't want to give up an inch here or everything else. And what I say is that law-abiding gun owners are for strict laws that are enforced, and the onus is put on the people who would criminally misuse them or handle them unsafely. So that protects your constitutional rights. And then any gun law that we have consensus over and everybody votes for that's constitutional, that's what the majority of people wanted.
Yeah.
And we can not like it, but that's how it is, right? So I think that both sides need to kind of be less polarized, but it goes back to the politics that we're in now.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you think about the NRA used to be for gun safety. Now they're not. And so you're right. It'd be helpful if everybody just kind of saw the common sense in some of the bills that we've done, because I do think that's reduced gun crime and gun violence in our state. Yeah, we're the fourth safest state in the nation.
Yeah, we do have that claim. So moving forward through this session, how do you feel it's going? Are things moving?
Yeah, I think things are moving really well. Committees are working hard. They're passing, they're hearing bills. We have a great process here in Connecticut, unlike other states. I mean, people have to put their bills in. Bills get public hearings, so the public has a chance to weigh in on whether they like it or not. We hear from various experts. People can now Zoom in on meetings, so if they don't, from people like Norwalk who don't want to do the drive for their 3 minutes of fame and testimony, can do it via Zoom, which is great. That allows them the opportunity to weigh in. And then once those hearings are over, committees start voting out bills. And so I think next week or the week after, we're going to start seeing, committees starting to vote out bills that they think they have support on. And then that'll happen, and then people will start sitting around this table here, at least for the Senate bills, and start talking about what's ready for the floor for action or not.
Yeah, and is that, I forget what I was going to just say. The screening committee. Is that your screening committee?
Me.
Happens
right here.
You're the screening
I'm the chair.
Committee? Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Well, I really appreciate the time you've taken. I know that this can't go on forever, but yeah. So you're a hockey player, huh?
Yep. Well, I grew up playing youth hockey, Mid-Fairfield youth hockey, and then I played again when I graduated college. I didn't play in high school. I was in the band, so I couldn't do both.
What's your instrument?
I played trumpet.
No kidding.
Yep. I was in a Norwalk High School marching band, and then went to school down in Virginia. Didn't have any ice down there, but once I got out of college, I played with my dad actually at Terry Connor's. Then we played at the Twin Rinks. So now I play in pond hockey, which is fun. One of these days I'll go back to playing league hockey again. It's great exercise, but it's good. Yeah, so I enjoy it. And I love skiing. I haven't been able to ski this year because I had some issues with my shoulder, but apparently it has not been a bad year to miss it, I guess, unfortunately for folks. But kind of rough for the skiers this year.
Yeah, you got to keep going north, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, it's good. So everything else is good. I just keep walking the dog all the time, trying to get exercise, because we all got to get exercise.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we can talk again, maybe later on in the session, and see how it's going. And let's hope that people can kind of come to their senses and come back to the table and we can work stuff out,
Yeah.
have a beer, and
I think that
and
always
chill.
happens. There's always good. There's always
There's good people out there.
Yeah, and I let me make a prediction
Please.
for you. I think we might have some on our budget, just like we did last year. I wouldn't be surprised if there are Republican votes.
Really?
So we may get a bipartisan budget
Oh,
this year.
well.
I'm just making a prediction.
All right. Well, look, we can hope that cooler minds prevail, and that the people's work gets done.
Yeah,
like
we'll
it
get
should.
done. It'll get done by midnight on June 7th.
It always does.
Always does. So.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
This is veteran political strategist Dan Newmyer for CT Politics TV. Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff. Thank you for your time.
All right.